Hi, boys and girls. My name is Mrs. Schaible, and I teach kindergarten. I'm going to read to you one of my favorite books. The name of the book is Mailing May by Michael O'Tunnell and illustrated by Ted Rand. I'm going to get set up over here so that I can share the pictures with you easily. Take a look at the front cover. Take a look at this little girl right here. She is the main character. Her name is May. And I'm guessing she is about kindergarten age, right around kindergarten. Right? Notice what she's got on. She's got on a jacket and a hat. Does that look like something you would wear today? Today's kindergartners, would they wear that jacket and hat? Not so much. All right, I'm going to tell you that the setting of this story is about little over 100 years ago. All right, so a story that happened in the past. Mailing May. And this is Grandma Mary, May's grandmother. Here we go. It all started when Ma and Pa promised I could stay a spell with Grandma Mary, who lived a million miles away through the rough old Idaho mountains. But when I asked Ma if it was time to go, she just shook her head and sighed real deep. So I tried asking Pa. No money, said Pa. Train ticket costs $1.55. May, I work all day to make that much. Maybe next year. Here's May talking to her mom and dad, who she calls Pa and Ma. But I couldn't wait a whole year, so the next morning, when Ma bundled me in my heavy winter coat and sent me out to play in the snow, I made a beeline for Alexander's department store. Mr. Alexander called his hello from atop a ladder. I need a job, I said. I need money for the train. Mr. Alexander smiled as he stepped down to the floor. A job, is it? I wish I could hire you, May, but all the jobs around here are grown-up jobs, like counting money and lifting heavy boxes or heavy cartons. I must have looked mighty sad, because Mr. Alexander reached for a jar of peppermint sticks. The sweet, wintry taste didn't do much to cheer me up as I slogged my way home. And take a look at the things in the store. The barrels with the apples and other things in, and the baskets and his shelves. Doesn't look like the stores of today. Things only got worse when Pa came back from work that night. He and Ma commenced to whispering and peeking at me off and on, and then they made me go to bed awful early, which I did not like at all. Next morning, Ma shook me awake while it was still real dark. I was puzzled to see Pa's little traveling bag packed and standing by the door. When I asked where he was going, Ma only smiled and said, "Eat your breakfast." Just then, someone knocked on our front door. Pa opened up to Ma's cousin Leonard. "Come along, May," Pa said, grabbing the suitcase as Ma helped me with my coat. "We're going to the post office with Leonard." He held up his hand as I opened my mouth. "No questions," he said with a wink. Ma hugged and kissed me before Pa took my hand and led me out into the dark winter air. Before long, I stood taking in the funny smells of the Grangeville post office, glue and canvas bags, and oiled wooden floors. Meanwhile, Pa marched right up to Postmaster Perkins and said, "Sam, you got some new rules for mailing packages. I know boxes can weigh up to 50 pounds nowadays, but what sorts of things can you send?" Mr. Perkins looked at Pa real strange-like as he asked, "What do you got in mind, John?" And here you can see Cousin Leonard, here's May, Pa, and that's the postmaster, Mr. Perkins. "It's May," said Pa. "We'd like to mail her to Lewiston. Leonard here mans the mail car on the train, as you well know. He can take good care of our package." "Sure thing, Sam," said Leonard. I was flabbergasted by Pa, and so was Mr. Perkins. "Mailing May?" he mumbled, shaking his head. Let's see. The postal code says not to mail lizards or insects or anything smelly. Mr. Perkins looked at me over his glasses and then sniffed. Guess you passed the smell test. But what about girls? I asked. Can you mail me? Well, the rule book says nothing about children, but it's permissible to mail baby chicks. Mr. Perkins smiled. Let's find out exactly how much you and your valise weigh. I scrambled up onto the big scale and Pa and his traveling bag next to me. 48 pounds and 8 ounces. Biggest baby chick on record. Mr. Perkins ran his finger down a chart hanging near the scale and turned to Pa. To mail May from Grangeville to Lewiston will cost 53 cents. Well, Leonard, looks like you'll be in charge of some poultry on this mail train. Before I knew it, Mr. Perkins had glued 53 cents worth of stamps on the back of my coat, along with a label. Deliver to her grandmother. That's what this label is, right here, to deliver to her grandmother. Pa hugged me and told me to be good to Grandma Mary, and then he was gone. And there I was, a package sitting in the post office. Before long, Leonard carted me and the rest of the mail to the train station. The big black steam engine was already waiting, hissing and snorting like a boar hog. The sight made me go all tingly, seeing as I'd never, ever ridden on a train before. Here she is. She's with the mail. She's sitting on the cart, and Leonard's pushing her. After Leonard loaded the mail bags and a few other packages, he called out, "Time to go, May," and then he helped me up the steel steps. At exactly 7 o'clock, the train chugged away from my home and headed down the mountain. I felt as adventuresome as Daniel Boone. The inside of the mail car was like a little post office, and Leonard got busy right away sorting mail to be dropped off at the towns along the way. I curled up nearby the stove to keep warm and watched. And there she goes. She's getting up onto the train car. Here's the inside of the mail car. It's got all these little boxes where they can sort the mail. Whenever Leonard had a free minute, he'd take me to the door for a look. My, oh my, what sights there were to see! Why, we hung on the edge of the mountainsides and crawled through tunnels. We crossed deep valleys on the top of tall, spidery trestles that Leonard called steel on stilts. Then, long about the Lapway Canyon, where the train track twists back and forth down the mountain, I began to feel somewhat less adventuresome. Instead, I was feeling dizzy and weak in the stomach. I was about to run to get some fresh air when I heard an angry voice at the door. "Leonard!" yelled a man in a uniform. "That girl better have a ticket or money to buy one." You can see, here comes the conductor, I think it is. We'll find out. Oh, you can see, look at the stamp on the back. She's got stamps on the back of her coat right here. You can see it. It was Mr. Harry Morris, the train's conductor. I hid behind Leonard as he explained that I was a package, not a passenger, and then he showed Mr. Morris the stamps on my coat. That cranky old conductor slapped his knee and laughed out loud. "I've seen everything now," said Mr. Morris, wiping his eyes. Well, Mr. Morris plumb scared the dizziness right out of me. Even my stomach seemed better, and I started feeling hungry. Leonard said lunch would be at Grandma Mary's. And here you can see again the tag on her coat and the stamps on her back. And the conductor thought that was pretty funny. The train made a few more stops at towns like Sweetwater and Joseph before we pulled into the Lewiston Railroad Station. Since this was the end of the line, Leonard had time to be my mail carrier, and we headed for Grandma Mary's place. The second I laid eyes on Grandma Mary, I felt downright warm inside. Ma and Pa had kept their promise after all, with a little help from the U.S. Post Office. All right, now at the very end of this book, there is a note from the author. And one thing I like to promote is always read the notes from the author because you learn something interesting. And here's what it says. This is a true story. On January 1st, 1913, the U.S. Post Office Department introduced domestic parcel post service, and on February 19th, 1914, 5-year-old Charlotte May Pierstorff actually was mailed from Grangeville to Lewiston, Idaho. Indeed, May was classified as a baby chick, and the postage to send her was 53 cents. Her mother's cousin, Leonard, was the railway postal clerk who manned the mail car between Grangeville and Lewiston. Soon after the train arrived, he delivered May to her grandmother. So this is about a true incident, and I think it's pretty fun. All right, thanks for listening. Bye.